Over the course of 2023, I've done what every Nintendo YouTuber does at some point, and that is going through every Mario Kart game and making a video on them in some way. Technically, I started this journey in 2022, but this year is when I fully committed to it. But now, it's time for this journey to come to an end with the best Mario Kart game of all time, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now, before Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, there was just plain old Mario Kart 8. This was released for the Wii U in 2014, and it was an excellent game. The presentation was beautiful, the gameplay was fun, and the tracks were outstanding. However, it did have some problems. The character roster wasn't great, the single item slot meant the game wasn't as chaotic, and the battle mode was f***ing awful. Thankfully, in 2017, the Deluxe port of Mario Kart 8 came to the Nintendo Switch, and it fixed nearly everything. And then in 2022, we got the Booster Course Pass that doubled the tracks in the game, which was a breath of fresh air after nothing new for 5 years. So, now that the Booster Course Pass is over, I'm going to rank every single track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I've been mentally preparing myself for this video all year, as it is easily the most daunting task I've faced so far. 96 Mario Kart tracks in one game, which is insane, but I've made a commitment and I must conquer this challenge. So without further ado, let's do this thing! 96, Toad Circuit. It's a beginner track, so it makes sense why it's so basic. But honestly, this might be the lamest track to come out of modern Mario Kart. It's just a generic racetrack with nothing to help it stand out, aside from some big-ass Toad balloons. I mean, okay, there is also a gliding ramp that appears for the last 2 laps, but that can't salvage this course. 95, Mario Circuit 3. It feels like Nintendo only brought this back out of obligation. If they didn't need to bring back a Super Mario Kart course, I don't think they would, but since they did, it's really boring. The track is completely flat, and the only elements you'll find on the road are some oil puddles and a dash panel. That's it. I do prefer the more complex design over Toad Circuit, but that's the only compliment I can give it. 94, Donut Plains 3. It's another SNES track, so again, it's really flat and basic, but this is definitely better than Mario Circuit 3. You can now dip into the water by the bridges, and the ending has a more swampy feeling with Monimoles digging around. This is a Super Mario Kart remake done right. 93, Mario Kart Stadium. For the very first track in this game, there's a decent amount of fun to be had. The track has this wonderful flair to it with the lit up stadium in the night sky, and even though the anti-gravity section is very brief, it still looks kinda cool. Don't expect much from this one, as again, it's a beginner track, but it serves as a nice introduction for the rest of the game. 92, GBA Mario Circuit. It's honestly really cool what they managed to do with a course as simple as this. The track has a slight waviness to it, there's a couple hidden shortcuts and oil spills to watch out for, but the biggest new addition is that part of the road is lifted into the air with Ultra Hands. These are real toys Nintendo made in the 1960s. That's a pretty cool Easter egg and helps bring some much needed life into this track. 91, Water Park. Really? That's the most interesting name you could come up with? So, big shock, you're racing through a water park, so expect to drive through some water. You'll also drive up and around this roller coaster thing, and even through this Ferris wheel and bonk your head on the little cars. Thankfully, the underwater driving isn't that bad on this course. In fact, the track is so short you'll barely notice it. 90, SNES Rainbow Road, Super Mario Kart's most infamous track. Don't worry though, this version isn't nearly as irritating as the original. There's still sharp turns and no guardrails to keep you on course, but now the turns are much more manageable and there's even a few ramps on the corners for some shortcuts. Also, the rainbow thwomps now make the road all wavy when they hit the floor, allowing you to get in some extra tricks. 89, Toad's Turnpike. I don't know what it is, but I find something weirdly relaxing about this course. You drive on a highway in the middle of the night, and there are a ton of cars driving around with you. Some of them even let you trick off them and glide for a little bit. There's also these extra paths on the side that let you drive on the walls. This isn't really faster, but the option's there. Honestly, my only problem with this track is that it's way too easy. The cars in the original were much more of a threat, but that's not the case here. 88, Sky Garden. When I first saw this track was making a comeback, I was beyond excited, but then I actually played it and it was just okay. I like the visuals and the track having these giant ups and downs, and the music is fucking fantastic. It's one of the best pieces in the Mario Kart series. Unfortunately though, the track design is incredibly basic. The layout has been simplified from the original, which makes races a lot shorter than they should be. It also feels weird there's no anti-gravity. This would have been the perfect opportunity for that. 87, Mario Circuit. What you have here is pretty much just a glorified figure 8, but it's a lot of fun to go through. Racing is super fast paced, and there's also a few Goombas and Piranha Plants hanging around, but they're pretty easy to avoid. I know this track is very simple, but it's got some zaniness to it, which I really like. 86, Moo Moo Meadows. Forgive me if I have some bias towards Mario Kart Wii tracks, as they produce a lot of nostalgia for me. You cruise through a small farm during a beautiful sunrise. The warm colors combined with the chirpy music make for a surprisingly relaxing race, but be careful not to get too relaxed, as a few cows will stumble onto the track, as well as some Monimoles digging around near the end. 85, Snowland. I know this is lower on the list, but I actually really like this remake. It's cool how the item boxes come flying in from the sky, and you've even got a few penguins sliding around that you need to watch out for. Also, since it's winter time, there's a bit of slipperiness while racing, but not too much where it's annoying. Not quite as amazing as other GBA retro tracks, but still fun. 84, Excite Bike Arena. I love tracks that reference other Nintendo franchises, and this one is no different. At first glance, it may look like a basic oval, but the amount of ramps and speed boosts make racing super energetic and lively. Plus, every time you race on this track, the ramps and mud piles are switched up, which is a really cool detail. 83, Dry Dry Desert. This was a track I had mixed feelings about in Double Dash, but now it's a lot more enjoyable. You've still got some Pokies wandering around and that giant sinkhole in the middle, but the big difference is the small oasis area near the end that lets you trick off the water geysers. I really like that they included this. It adds some much needed freshness to an otherwise boring track. 82, Riverside Park, and here's another GBA remake, except now it's in the forest. There's not much to say about this one, however this track does introduce a new obstacle in Mario Kart, those being the walking piranha plants. These things will wander around carrying items, and hitting one will cause it to drop the item. It's a really cool inclusion that helps this track stand out. 81, Daisy Circuit. As much as I love Mario Kart Wii, I really don't get why this track was brought back. It's a simple race through a town, and not much more than that. It's got a nice flow to it, I like the soothing music in the background, and you can't go wrong with this epic statue of Luigi and Daisy dancing. Daisy Circuit is fun for what it is, but there's just not enough here to make me want to replay it. 80, Royal Raceway. You do definitely get a royal feeling when racing here. The pink aesthetic combined with the flower petals scattered around creates a weird sense of greatness that's hard to explain. Mechanically, the track is very basic with barely anything noteworthy, but that doesn't matter. It's the experience that counts. 79, DS Mario Circuit. Even to this day, this is one of my favorite versions of Mario Circuit. It's one of the longer versions of this track, and it's got some neat elements like the fire-breathing piranha plants, and there's this new forest section with a wiggler walking around that was created for this remake. 78, Sunset Wilds. It's awesome to see my favorite Super Circuit track return here, but it's not quite as awesome as I'd like it to be. It's still very fun. I like how it still has the mud that screws with your driving, and the Shy Guys now dance all over the place. That's cute, but my biggest issue is that the sun no longer sets through each lap. Every other version of Sunset Wilds had this, and it's kind of disappointing not seeing it here. 77, Tokyo Blur. The first of many city tracks I'm about to get into. This course visually is very bland. It has no unique style or flair, and the music is pretty generic too. However, I will admit it is pretty neat how the track layout is different for each lap. A cool feature of the Mario Kart Tour tracks is that Nintendo basically combined all the different variants into one, so this track can still be fun, but it's also still kind of boring. 76. Boo Lake. The creepy atmosphere is nailed perfectly. The scary visuals and the chilling music blend together to make a very unsettling environment. Despite the more simple design, I actually find racing here to be really cool. My favorite part is this section that doubles as an underwater section and an anti-gravity section. Not many tracks in the Booster Course Pass do this, so it's nice to see here. 75. Shroom Ridge. Out of all the tracks they could have brought back from Mario Kart DS, why this one? I guess it's kinda cool to get courses you wouldn't expect to get remade, but this is still one of the most forgettable tracks of all time. You drive on a very basic road with cars driving around. The cars can be a bit tricky to avoid with the road being a bit narrow in some places. Couple that with a few new shortcuts scattered around, and you've got the definition of a perfectly fine track. 74. Amsterdam Drift. I don't know why, but this city track has never grown on me that much. Don't get me wrong, it's still a good track. I like how you drive through a canal with boats and jet streams, and I also like the giant flower patches with piranha plants hanging around. But aside from that, this track is just kinda whatever. 73. Sherbet Land. I absolutely despised this course in Double Dash, but this remake is actually really solid. The Freezies and ice skating Shy Guys aren't nearly as irritating as they were on the GameCube, and the pools of water that used to be off limits now offer an extra path for you to drive on. It's truly the perfect track to get you in the winter spirit. 72. Bowser Castle 3. My lord, this track got one gnarly upgrade. This is actually the first time a SNES Bowser Castle got remade, and it's really cool. The atmosphere and being surrounded by these walls of lava is awesome, and there's plenty of places to trick off as you try to avoid thwomps and spires of lava shooting out of the ground. If it wasn't for the fact Bowser Castle 3 is pretty short, it definitely would have been higher on the list. 71. Cheap Cheap Beach. I can only dream of having a vacation as relaxing as this one. Of course, you've got your typical beach section with a couple ramps and sidesteppers, and you can even dip into the water for a small shortcut, but then you've got this section through a forest and by a dock with some beach houses. These help make this beach course have a lot more variety compared to others. 70. Ice Ice Outpost. For some reason, not many people seem to like this track, which I've never understood. Sure, the theme might be a bit generic, but there's still a lot to like. Taking the split track concept and applying it to the entire race means there's a lot of strategy for moving between each side and finding the best route possible. There's also a handful of shortcuts found throughout the course, but using them can be a bit tricky, so make sure you get there at a good angle. 69. Calamari Desert. This might seem like the classic N64 track we all know and love, but it's not what you may think. It starts off pretty basic with you taking a peaceful drive in the desert with the train chugging along in the background. There's even a couple added gliding ramps you can use if you have a mushroom, but then the track suddenly throws a curveball and suddenly you're on the train tracks. This one change does a lot to spice up the experience and makes Calamari Desert that much more enjoyable. 68. Daisy Cruiser. This may not be my favorite GameCube track, but it might be the most iconic. You can't go wrong with speeding through the dining room with tables sliding around, or diving into the cargo area that's now completely flooded. Plus, I just love the ambiance of the whole track. It gives off the same kind of royal feeling like Royal Raceway from earlier. 67. Sweet Sweet Canyon. As a certified pastry lover, this track just makes me want to eat everything in sight. There's giant cakes, donuts, and candy all over the place. It's like Candyland turned into a race course. The track itself is also pretty good. You've got this cannon that fires you over the whole landscape, and the section where you dip underwater and have to pick one of these wavy paths. 66. Thwomp Ruins. Thwomps are just big old rocks, so having a ruin stage based around them just makes sense. I love this section with rolling stones and being able to drive on the walls, and then you've got this part where you've got the option for gliding, underwater, and anti-gravity driving. I do wish the track design was a bit more interesting, but this is still a lot of fun. 65, Bone-Dry Dunes. What's this? A desert level that's actually interesting? I know people tend to hate on this track, but I still think there's plenty of stuff to like. I like how the track splits in half multiple times when you're racing, and having the course themed around bones helps it stand out among other desert tracks. They even changed up the piranha plants to be all bony. 64, Baby Park. I can't believe a track that is literally just a circle could be so fun, but here we are. Yes, the design is unbelievably basic, but Baby Park makes up for it with pure chaos. Items constantly flying around, having to complete 7 laps instead of 3, and even the intense music all add up to the exhilarating mess that is Baby Park, and I wouldn't have it any other way. 63, Paris Promenade, the very first track of the Booster Course Pass. I've honestly been pretty indifferent about this one, but I can't deny it's got some great stuff. I like its unique style compared to a lot of other city tracks. You've got a few cool elements like multiple splitting paths and gliding towards the Eiffel Tower, but what's really cool is that this course has you going through the entire track backwards for the 3rd lap. That's a cool way to spice things up. 62, Animal Crossing. This might come as a surprise, but this track is based on Animal Crossing. It's such a pleasant course to race on. It's not super in-depth, but it gives off vibes of simple, serene fun, which is exactly what Animal Crossing is all about. A cool detail is that the season randomly changes every time you race here. It's mostly just a cool visual, but there are a few minor changes you can find while you race. 61, Rome Avanti. The nighttime aesthetic is cool. I like driving up the Colosseum and going inside with chain chomps biting at the floor, and the moments where you glide around and get a good look at the city are nice touches. Maybe I was just getting fatigued from all the city tracks at this point. This is a good track, I like it, but there's not as much variety as I would have liked. 60, Bangkok Rush. I love the orange color palette used in this track, and there's a surprising amount of variety in the different locations you visit. You'll drive through a shallow river, under a subway, over these landmarks, and you even bounce off the tents of this marketplace. All of it flows really well and adds a little bit of replay value. 59, Yoshi Circuit. Taking an outline of Yoshi and turning it into a racetrack may sound weird at first, but once you play it, it becomes one of the best circuit tracks of all time. The amount of twists and turns this course throws at you means you're constantly drifting, making Yoshi's Circuit very fast-paced. I would have liked it if there were a few more Yoshi elements aside from the layout, but this is still a lot of fun. 58, Hyrule Circuit. It's honestly amazing how well the Zelda universe meshes with the Mario universe. The coins are replaced with rupees, the piranha plants are replaced with Deku Babas, and if you hit all 3 of these anti-gravity spots, you'll unlock an extra path through the Master Sword, but despite that, it still feels like a Mario Kart track, and a very good one at that. 57, Yoshi Valley. I really like this one because it kind of feels like you're actually exploring. There's tons of paths to drive on, with each one leading to a different area, and the country music adds to that feeling of adventure. My only issue is that there's very clearly a right path you can take to win, but that doesn't change how cool this track is. 56, Peach Gardens. What better way to flex how much money you have than getting a big-ass garden in your backyard? This track looks beautiful. I love all the flowers and the giant grass statues of Mario characters, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows, because Peach also has some chain chomps patrolling the area, as well as this piranha plant and Monty moles. Also, just like Paris Promenade, this remake has you going through the 3rd lap backwards, and you have this awesome moment where you glide over the garden, and it looked so damn cool. 55, Moonview Highway. I definitely was not expecting this one to make a comeback, but since it has, it's really good. It feels like you're on this high-speed chase, kind of like you're in an action movie. There are tons of dash panels, a bunch of cars driving around, with some of them being literal bombs, and the midnight visuals really add to the experience. The only thing holding it back is that, compared to the original Wii version, it doesn't feel nearly as chaotic, but I still think it's awesome. 54, Neo Bowser City. That's right, Bowser has upgraded from a simple castle to an entire fucking city. I love the futuristic style of this track. It adds an extra layer of epicness to the race, and since it's raining, there's a bit of slipperiness in certain sections of the track. These turns can be insanely difficult sometimes, especially at high speeds, but for me, that just adds to my enjoyment of Neo Bowser City. 53. Wild Woods. Imagine Maple Treeway, but it takes place in the summer. While this track isn't nearly as cool as Maple Treeway, it's still quite a bit of fun. The first half takes place in this small Shy Guy village, but then the second half gets way more interesting with rushing water running through the trees and this part where you boost off lily pads before returning to the start. 52. New York Minute. You know you've got a good track when it's playing Donkey Kong the Best Musical. This was the very first track made specifically for Mario Kart Tour, and I really like it. It doesn't really have any gimmicks aside from the water shooting out from the sewers, but there's just something about New York Minute that gives it a wonderful flair. Whether it's the bopping music or the cool visuals, you can't really go wrong with this one. 51. Choco Mountain. Man, what I would do to have a mountain made out of chocolate. You get to go inside this small cave with shiny crystals and bats flying around, and I love this part where you glide over this pit and find some giant boulders falling from the sky. There's not much more to say, it's just a really solid track and one of the more iconic courses from the N64. 50. Twisted Mansion. Now this is how you do a haunted mansion. This track focuses less on being spooky and more on being fun, which I'm more than happy about. You start off in the dining hall with the floor rippling, then you head into this underwater section with fish bones swimming around, and finally you glide over the courtyard and into this graveyard with knights trying to crush you. All of this makes Twisted Mansion the best ghost track in the series hands down. 49. Mushroom Gorge. Mario is all about the mushrooms, so why not have a track based completely around them? Bouncing off these giant shrooms just feels so satisfying. It may not be as fun as it was on the Wii, but still fun nonetheless. There's even a mushroom that lets you glide for a bit when you bounce off it, which is pretty neat. 48. Sky High Sundae. Sorry, Sweet Canyon, but I'm more of an ice cream guy myself. This is another track that's basically a glorified loop, but damn it, it's so much fun. There's so many jumps, super steep inclines, and having the whole thing made out of ice cream gives the track so much charm. 47. London Loop. You haven't seen complicated track design until you've played this track. The amount of crazy turns you'll encounter when racing helps keep London Loop fresh the whole way through. You'll also find a ton of chain chomps hanging around, and during the final lap, they'll all be released from their chains and hop all over the place. I still think this track is lacking a lot of its own style, but it's still a solid time. 46. Los Angeles Laps. I've never been to LA, but this track definitely has me wanting to. You get to drive on a beach with a built-in skateboard park, glide over a huge baseball stadium, and venture into a construction area with hammers trying to crush you. I like how this city track is more chill compared to the others, and it makes for a surprisingly memorable race. 45. Toad Harbor. To all those people who say Toad is boring, might I suggest giving this course a try. The best way I can describe this track is lively. It's such a bright and happy feeling course that I can't help but love. The track itself is also very fun, with you traveling through a small marketplace in the beginning, only to find yourself driving on the walls of some buildings and onto the road with tons of dash panels and cable cars. 44. DK Mountain. When this track first came back in the DLC, I was so excited and I had a blast racing on it, but upon reflection, I think I may have given it too much praise. Obviously, it's still really good. I still love flying to the top of this volcano and come zooming down with a bunch of things to trick off. You still got the super wavy bridge near the end, which is awesome, but I think my biggest issue with this remake is that it feels very empty. There's not as many boulders rolling around, and I wish it was a bit more difficult. 43. Dolphin Shoals. I'm not the biggest fan of underwater tracks, but this is an example of that kind of track done right. You'll jump through rings with dolphins, explore this cave with a giant eel hanging around, and then you've got this part where you hop out of the water and that sweet jazz kicks in. Oh, it's so good. All of this helps Dolphin Shoals stand out as one of the best water tracks in the series. 42. Rock Mountain. I genuinely forgot this track existed before it came back in the DLC, which is a shame because it's actually a ton of fun. Flying out into the sky with the epic music, only to come zooming down into a forest, and then back up again with giant boulders trying to crush you. This whole track creates a sense of thrill that you don't find in many other courses. 41. Super Bell Subway. I've always been curious about what it's like within a subway tunnel, and this track gives us a taste of that. Because the trains are so large, they serve as legitimate obstacles you need to avoid, but you can also drive on top of the trains if you take one of these higher paths. Something about this track gives off a sense of wonder, and it makes racing on it all the more enjoyable. 40. Rosalina's Ice World. Despite being one of the more forgettable 3DS tracks, I'm glad it got to return in the DLC. It has this very mystical feeling to it, which fits Rosalina perfectly. You get to race on this frozen lake and through this icy cavern, all of which is super fun, and being a certified Super Mario Galaxy lover, the amount of references to that game seen throughout the course just adds to my enjoyment. 39. Sydney Sprint. Not sure what it is, but there's something so gosh darn enjoyable about this one. Everything in this course is so vibrant, and even though the different pathways aren't as interesting compared to other city tracks, they provide just enough variety to keep me engaged. I think the main reason I like this course is the music. The tune that plays for this track slaps so hard, and is usually why I replay this track. 38. Rainbow Road. I used to have very mixed feelings about this version of Rainbow Road, but now I realize it's got some great things going for it. Instead of it being just the Rainbow Road, it's now part of a space station orbiting Earth. It really helps this track stand out compared to other Rainbow Roads, and it just looks so freaking cool. Also, during the second part of the track, the road splits in half, giving you multiple ways to drive around. 37. Athens Dash. What's so awesome about this city track is that it genuinely doesn't feel like a city track. Like, yes, you're still racing through a city, but now it's in ruins and you speed through the rubble. This one change makes Athens Dash feel so fresh, and the fact that it's in Greece, which has tons of unique looking buildings and architecture, just adds another layer of depth that most other city tracks just don't have. 36. Merry Mountain. Christmas is my favorite holiday of all time, so seeing a track based entirely off it is nothing short of magical. There are giant presents and Christmas decorations everywhere, a flying Christmas train throwing coins onto the track, and even the music fits the Christmas theming while still maintaining that energetic racing feeling. Now, admittingly, the track design isn't anything special, but I don't care. This course is simply wonderful. 35. Dragon Driftway. Remember Gobblegut from Super Mario Galaxy 2? Well, this is basically if he was a Mario Kart track. This thing is so wavy with tons of ramps and bumpers to gain speed from. It's just non-stop twists and turns the whole way through, and I love it. I also love the Chinese theming. It makes the track even more cool than it already was. 34. DK Jungle. As a huge fan of Donkey Kong Country Returns, I can safely call this track a certified banger. You'll zoom past hopping tiki heads, glide by these enormous screaming pillars, and even enter this massive golden temple where the glorious golden banana resides. All these Donkey Kong elements are implemented perfectly and make playing on this track that much more exciting. 33. Piranha Plant Slide. I always feel like this is a very underrated course. They took the underground levels from Super Mario Bros. And made a Mario Kart track out of them. I love the rushing water that speeds you up as you race, and of course, you've got some piranha plants that'll bite down when you drive by. This track feels like it was pulled straight out of that old NES game. 32. Madrid Drive. I am genuinely shocked by how great this track is. It may not look like much at first, but they managed to cram a lot of awesome stuff in here. You'll get to visit an art museum, a plaza, a marketplace, and my personal favorite, the soccer stadium. You've even got Goombas kicking around soccer balls. That's incredible. I didn't care for this track in Tour, but now it's one of the best city tracks hands down. 31. Cloud Top Cruise. You know you've got a great track when the music is a remix from Super Mario Galaxy. It's so cool getting to drive through the twisty clouds with all the airships flying around, and there's even a section where you enter a thunderstorm and lightning will shock some of the dash panels. As a huge fan of the Galaxy games, it's so nice to get a course themed around it. 30. Grumble Volcano. Imagine turning hell into a racetrack, because that's basically what this is. You get to go inside the volcano itself with moving platforms and a couple splitting paths, then you go back outside with fire snakes and a giant volcano in the background shooting fireballs onto the course. But my favorite feature is that the track slowly falls apart as the race goes on, which adds a lot more tension than you may think. 29. Wario's Gold Mine. Everything about this track is pure zany fun. Sure, it is fairly short, but it manages to cram in so much crazy stuff. The insane up and down slopes, bumping against the minecarts to gain speed, and there's a couple sneaky shortcuts. And there's just something about the music that is so infectiously wacky that I can't help but love it. 28. N64 Rainbow Road. Now this is one hell of a way to finish off a game. The visuals, the music, the fact that the entire course is one ginormous lap, it all adds up to a race that makes you feel like a goddamn king. It was definitely smart to split up the track into 3 sections considering how long the original was, and the chain chomps now bounce on the floor to make it all wavy. 27. Berlin Byways. By far my favorite city track in the entire Mario Kart series. It's not the best, but it's my favorite. Similar to Sydney Sprint, this course is so vibrant with its visuals, but unlike Sydney Sprint, there's actual stuff on the road you need to watch out for. You've got cars driving around and womps crashing onto the track. But you really want to know what makes this course so amazing to me? Once again, it's the music. No joke, the music for this track might just be the greatest piece in any Mario Kart game. It's that good. 26. Wario Stadium. Oh man, I forgot how cool this track is. There's tons of ramps and places to do tricks. The track suddenly flips on its side and you're driving on these anti-gravity girders, and even the ending is neat as you'll dip into the water for a brief moment before gliding back to the beginning. The only thing I'm not a big fan of is the remixed music, which doesn't hit nearly as hard as the original, but other than that, this track is amazing. 25. Mute City. So we get a track based on F-Zero, but not a new F-Zero game? I see how it is. This whole track is just one big roller coaster. It's insanely fast-paced the whole way through. There's several twists and turns to keep you on your toes, and you're always in anti-gravity, meaning you're much more likely to boost off other racers. 24. Vancouver Velocity. The best word I can use to sum up this track is enchanting. Racing here feels like I've entered this other dimension or something. I love climbing up the mountain and seeing the northern lights in the background. I love driving through this small park and going into the underground tunnels, and you've even got a hockey rink with Shy Guy skating around. That's adorable. 23. Singapore Speedway. Kind of like Athens Dash, this city track doesn't feel like a city track. It feels like something truly made for Mario Kart. There are several moments where you're moving up and down buildings or having these epic gliding sections, and it all feels like Mario Kart. And again, the visuals pop so much and the music slaps incredibly hard. 22. DK Summit. For all you extreme sports athletes out there, do I have a track for you? I was curious if Nintendo would be able to recreate the same level of epicness from the Wii, and I'm happy to report it's still just as awesome as before. You've still got tons of ramps and half pipes to trick off, the giant pits of death to maneuver around, and these epic Shy Guys showing off their inner gamer. 21. Waluigi Stadium. Wario Stadium is great and all, but Waluigi Stadium is where it's at. I love the atmosphere of being in this huge motocross arena with all these huge jumps, and there are some obstacles like fireballs and piranha plants. Plus, this remake throws in a new feature where tricking off the ends of these half pipes let you enter these anti-gravity sections. That's a really cool touch. 20. Shy Guy Falls. It's hard to imagine Shy Guy, of all characters, having one of the best tracks in the game, but here we are. Driving up and down these waterfalls is a ton of fun. It really sells the feeling of epic adventure this track is going for. Also, you gotta love the Shy Guys on the side chirping along to the music. That's just adorable. 19. Cheese Land. You literally drive on cheese. There's even little cheese holes in the ground for you to trick off, and you've got some giant slices of pizza in the background. God, now I want pizza. Aside from that, half the track takes place in anti-gravity with chain chomps hanging around, and you've got a couple hidden shortcuts you can use if you have a mushroom. Now this is how you remake a GBA track. 18. Ribbon Road. You know what? I take that back. This is how you remake a GBA track. This doesn't feel like the original at all, but that's a good thing. You drive around this playset in a kid's room. There's a bunch of toys you drive by, like Mecha Koopas and these Jack-in-the-Box clown cars, and parts of the road get wavy towards the end. Also, the track visually looks fantastic. The amount of detail put into every inch of this kid's room is simply jaw-dropping. 17. Piranha Plant Cove. Basically, what you get if you combine Thwomp Ruins and Piranha Plant Slide into one track. Racing through these underwater ruins is so much fun. There are so many places to explore with tons of obstacles and creatures to watch out for, and this is actually the only non-city track to have multiple variants, so there's something new to see with each lap. 16. Yoshi's Island. We've seen tracks based on other Nintendo games before, but I don't think any of them go nearly as hard as this one. This literally feels like a Yoshi's Island stage turned into a Mario Kart track. All the background details are from Yoshi's Island, the coins have been replaced with Yoshi coins, even the music when starting and finishing a race has been changed. This track also sneaks in a few gimmicks from the games too, such as the Shy Guys on stilts and hitting this question mark cloud that reveals a secret path. 15. Bowser's Castle. With how many Bowser Castle tracks there have been over the years, Nintendo never fails to surprise us with a new one. Bowser statues shooting lasers, a giant molten Bowser punching the track and making it ripple, gliding over this massive lava pit with lava spires shooting into the sky. Seriously, Bowser does not around when it comes to his castles. 14. Sunshine Airport. Airports can be a real pain in the ass sometimes, but this one takes all the best parts and makes a track out of it. You drive past giant airplanes through a small section of the airport itself, and this moment right here, where you glide through the air with airplanes flying by at the same time, it looks so freaking cool. 13. Big Blue. This track is if you took Mute City from earlier and dumped steroids on it. This entire track goes a mile a minute. There's tons of dash panels everywhere, downhill slopes with rushing water, and several places where the road splits in half, allowing for some insane shortcuts. It's just one big thrill ride throughout the whole race, which just makes me want a new F-Zero even more. Like, come on Nintendo, just do it. 12. Music Park. Everybody loves music, so making a track all about it just makes sense. What makes Music Park so awesome is that the track actually plays with you as you race. Driving on the piano or xylophone makes it play music, you'll bounce off drums and drive by these bouncing music notes, and you gotta love these head-bopping piranha plants. Like, come on, watching them jam out is awesome. 11. Electrodrome. I've never been to a party like this, but my god, now I want to go to one. The visuals and music are spectacular. I love the techno feeling this course is going for, and that same feeling manifests itself on the track as there are several places where racing will make some sort of effect happen. My favorite example is right here, where you leave behind this electronic debris. It just looks so cool. 10. Tick-Tock Clock. I have no nostalgia for Super Mario 64, but the theme alone is so damn cool. All the things you'd expect to find in a clock are here. The rotating hour and minute hands, swinging pendulums, giant spinning gears, they all fit the clock theme perfectly. I also think the music fits perfectly too. It uses these funky sound effects and clock noises, and I love it. 9. Maple Treeway. Just thinking about this track makes me feel so pleasant inside. The beautiful autumn setting, the soothing music, it just fills me with good feelings. Also, just the fact we're driving on giant trees with leaf piles and massive wigglers to watch out for is awesome in of itself. No matter what kind of Mario Kart fan you are, there's something to love about Maple Treeway. 8. Coconut Mall. I still prefer the original version, but man, what a freaking phenomenal track. Climbing up the escalators, zooming through all the shops and plazas, dealing with idiots who don't know how to park, it's just like a real mall. And of course, the music is absolutely banging. It's hard to think of a Mario Kart song as iconic as Coconut Mall. It captures the energetic feeling of this track perfectly. 7. Koopa Cape. Out of all the tracks in the Mario Kart series, this was the one I absolutely needed to come back. It may be a slight downgrade from the Wii version, but who cares? I still get an adrenaline rush every time I zoom through the rushing water. The underwater tube section may not be as exciting, but it now has anti-gravity, which kinda makes up for the lack of speed, and the music is just as outstanding as it always is. I love Koopa Cape, and I always will. 6. Squeaky Clean Sprint. Whoever came up with this idea for a track, you need a goddamn raise, because holy shit, it's fantastic. You get to dive into a bathtub and get to trick off some bath bombs, zoom through a drain pipe with air blowing you forward, glide over this massive toilet with water shooting out. There's just so much to love, and just like with Ribbon Road, they overloaded this track with tons of little details. It's obvious that so much love and passion was put into this insanely good track. 5. Waluigi Pinball. I've gotten several comments telling me that Waluigi Pinball is overrated, and to that I say, you're probably right, but I don't care. This is still one of the most unique and ingenious ideas for a racetrack I've ever laid eyes on. Driving on a giant pinball table while avoiding rolling balls of death, all the neon imagery and sound effects exclusive to this track, Waluigi Pinball is pure joy every time I race here. 4. Wii Rainbow Road. Along with the rush of nostalgia I get when playing this track, I also get a rush of adrenaline because this track is absolutely insane. The amount of dash panels and half pipes throughout this thing, make sure you're going fast the whole way through, but don't get too reckless, as there aren't that many guardrails to keep you from falling, and veering off-road will cause you to go up in flames. I'm so happy Nintendo didn't hold back with this track. It's just as amazing as it ever was. 3. Ninja Hideaway. How the hell is a Mario Kart Tour track this fantastic? Like, seriously, this originated from a mobile phone game, and it's simply astonishing. It's one of the few Mario Kart tracks to have multiple levels to it, and each one is so different that it makes each race feel fresh, and having the track be based around ninjas adds this weird intensity and makes racing that much more engaging. I love this track so much, and it's easily the best tour track to come from the DLC. 2. 3DS Rainbow Road. I'm not sure if Nintendo is ever gonna top this version of Rainbow Road. You're basically taken on an adventure through space. You'll see all sorts of planets, drive on Saturn's rings, and even on the frickin' moon, and then you've got this part where you fly through these star rings while dodging asteroids. This course gives you such a magical experience, one that no other track has managed to replicate. 1. Mount Wario. We've seen a lot of tracks on this list, but I don't think any of them will ever live up to the level of epicness as Mount Wario. Words can't even describe just how incredible this track is. You start by jumping off this plane and onto the mountain, then you head into this cave with tons of rushing water, then you find yourself driving on the side of a dam and into this small forest, and finally, you zoom down this ski resort and end up at the bottom. Everything about this track is perfect. It's fun, super fast-paced, incredibly creative, and for me, it takes the #1 spot as the best track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Woo! Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh. Oh.
Well, after that colossal task, we're still not done yet. We still have to cover the battle tracks, so let's wrap that up real quick. 8. Battle Stadium. This map isn't bad by any means, and it's got a few ramps to switch between the roads, but overall, Battle Stadium feels too linear, and everyone can feel too spread out at times. 7. Sweet Sweet Kingdom. I don't really have anything special to say about this one. I like how the entire map is made out of pastries, but aside from that, this map doesn't really do anything to stick out. 6. Lunar Colony. It's cool how the entire map takes place in anti-gravity, and tricking off the craters can be pretty fun. However, the floatiness of everything can make it a little difficult to hit your opponents. 5. SNES Battle Course 1. This may be a super simple map, but it's actually quite fun to battle on. There's plenty of paths to take throughout this map, and there's a few ramps on the side to get the surprise attack on other players. 4. Urchin Underpass. Even though driving around can be a bit awkward, the amount of variety in the different areas you can explore keeps me engaged. Plus, just the idea of battling in a Splatoon map is cool in of itself. 3. Dragon Palace. Instead of having multiple paths or objects to drive around, this map has much larger open areas to do battle in, which I find to be a bit more fun, but there's still a couple floors to switch between during a fight. 2. Luigi's Mansion. Not only do I love the Luigi's Mansion theme, but this map also has several layers including the roof and basement, as well as a large area in the middle with plenty of room to drive around. 1. Woohoo Town. Just like with Luigi's Mansion, Woohoo Town has several paths to drive on, as well as a giant area in the middle, but I think everything flows a lot better here. Plus, this is just a more joyful experience that I love to replay. And with that, that is the end of Luigi Elite 2023. I'm sorry to some of my long-term subscribers for my absence throughout the majority of December, but these last few months have been crazy for me. I went to college for the first time, then pursuing other life goals of mine, but I was able to come together for this one video, which is currently my longest video so far on Luigi Elite to close off 2023 with. This has by far been my best year on YouTube. You know, I've been making better videos, I think, higher quality, been putting more time into them, and been trying to make you guys happy, the best to my abilities, but yeah. But now that we've come to the end of 2023, it's time to look forward to 2024, if you can believe that. Yeah. Part of me doesn't want 2023 to end because, like I said, this has been one of my biggest and best years. Not just on YouTube, but just in my life in general. But it's time to move on, and I can already tell you guys that I've got some big things planned for 2024. Not just Nintendo-related stuff, which I've mostly been doing, but I'm looking to hopefully push myself past the boundaries of just Nintendo and try out some other stuff as well. But we'll get to that when we get to that in 2024. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I cannot tell you guys how much your support has meant to me as I've tried to improve my channel, improve my videos, get more interesting videos out in general. And your support and positive feedback throughout all of it has been incredible. So, if you guys enjoyed this video, then make sure to give it a like. And if you want to see what I have planned for 2024 coming in the future, then make sure to subscribe, so that way you don't miss anything. But until then, have a great day, stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next one.